My name is Dr. Aleksandr Rovner. I'm the practicing cardiologist at Metro Health Medical Center. Today we'll be discussing a normal pressure volume loop. So let me draw you a representative pressure volume loop with volume being on the x-axis and pressure being on the y-axis. And here is the pressure volume loop. So let's discuss this. I'd like to start at this point over here where you're basically at end diastole. So this is your end diastole, and in terms of valves, we have the mitral valve closed and aortic valves closed, and we're going to go up, and the heart's going to start contracting, and this is your isovolumic contraction as we go up on this curve. The reason that I know this is isovolumic is because if you follow this curve, the volume clearly doesn't change, the volume stays constant, and you move up to this curve until this point right here, where what you have here is that the mitral valve is closed, but the aortic valve is opened. And this is also basically your afterload point, because here the heart is working against systemic blood pressure, and the aortic valve opens when the ventricular pressure supersedes the aortic pressure. So now that you have the aortic valve open, you have the ejection phase. So we're going to move on this curve going this way. There's clearly change in volume, because if you look at the x-axis, as you move on this curve from right to left, your volume goes down. And this is your ejection phase, where the blood leaves the left ventricle and it goes out into the aorta. This happens until you reach this point over here, where the aortic valve is now closed because the left ventricular pressure has dropped, and now the aortic pressure or the systemic blood pressure is higher than the ventricular pressure, so the aortic valve is closed. The mitral valve is still closed. We haven't gotten anywhere to open that yet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to relax the ventricle, and we're going to move down on this curve. The relaxation here is isovolumic. Again, if you look at the x-axis, the volume doesn't change. What you see here is drop in the pressure. So the pressure drops down to somewhere around 5 or so. And then you reach this point over here, where your aortic valve is still closed, but now your mitral valve is open due to the fact that the left ventricular pressure is so low that it is less than the left atrial pressure. So now that the left atrial pressure pushes the mitral valve into the open position, and now we're going onto this part of the curve where, again, your pressure doesn't change much. It still remains low, but your volume changes because now you're filling the ventricle from the left atrium. And this process goes up until this point over here where we started, where now the left ventricular pressure is higher than the left atrial pressure, so the mitral valve is now closed, and then the aortic valve remains closed because the left ventricular pressure is less than the systemic blood pressure. And so now we're going to repeat the cycle. One other comment that I would like to make is to make sure that students understand that the volume that is enclosed by the pressure volume loop is the stroke volume that gets ejected out during the ejection period, as we have discussed.